Hello, everyone. Madeline Dell here with the Chapter Goddess, and today I have another amazing author for you. She's been really patient with me and my technical difficulties we've been having this month on my computer. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her book. So go ahead and take it away.
Perfect. My name's Jennifer, and I wrote The Cardinal War, published it in last September, so September 2021. And essentially the book is about the emperor passes away in the very beginning of the book, so no spoilers really there. And there's 4 surrounding manors with nobles that want to put their children in the throne. And the story takes place in a city called Moordale, and it follows a young thief in Moordale as she gets thrown into the political landscape, as well as one of the emperor's messengers, Dethi, who kind of gets thrown in as well and has to make his way, learn about himself. Eileen learns about herself, and then of course they meet and they change because of it.
Nice. That sounds exciting. So the cover on here, which I will pop that up here, guys. Here's the cover, guys. So Jennifer, with the cover, what inspired that?
So the first thing actually I created about my book or envisioned about my book was that the characters would have wings. So everything kind of came off of that point. And then once I knew the characters were having wings and they would have different colors, so I gave them meanings, which kind of gave birth to the 4 surrounding manors. And then, of course, the central manor where the emperor lives. But then as soon as it was 4, I was like, well, that's 4 points in a compass. So I wanted the compass to be in the cover. And I knew there was going to be a battle that took place because of the power struggle. So it just came the Cardinal War very quickly. And the cover, I always knew it would have a compass and wings. It was more just a background color choice that changed, because originally it was going to be red, and it ended up being the stormy kind of background that it ended up being.
I like the stormy background because it kind of foreshadows everything I think that's going to be in the story. Like, it's not just going to be like all out war. There's going to be more to it with each character and everything. So, and that may be just me reading into it a little more.
No, for sure. And the story takes place, like, it starts with a storm too. So I thought it worked well.
Sweet. What did you find was your biggest challenge in writing this story?
Really the biggest challenge was actually doing something with it. I wrote it actually about 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago now, and then sat on it. I knew I really liked it, and I knew if I ever was to publish, of all the stories I've written, that was going to be the one that I wanted to do something with. But it wasn't until last year that I was finally like, okay, I have no reason other than being scared. So let's just do this. That was actually probably the hardest part, because I found, and then editing, of course, but the actual story writing I found just kind of flowed out of me.
That's good. And with your writing process, how does that work for you? Do you have a scheduled time during the week that you work on writing? Do you use a journal? Do you handwrite, type it up? Like, how does that work for you?
So especially earlier on when I was writing, I used to do a lot of paper because I would do it during school, because that was more exciting half the time than what I was learning. But more recently, I definitely do typing, usually at home on my computer. But I don't really have a set time that I write, other than I don't really like writing in the late at night or super early in the morning. I kind of write either mid-morning or in the evenings. Usually if my boyfriend's doing something else, it's easier to write then. Yes. But in terms of an actual structure too, I don't write in order. And I don't plan a lot, because I had one story I was excited about that I overplanned, and it just killed it for me. So I tend to write just a couple ideas for each chapter. So I know roughly how many chapters I want. And then I write the ending, or at least part of the ending. And then I just kind of decide what I'm in the mood for.
Sweet. I like that method. I've kind of started doing jumping around with my own writing, like writing a scene here and going back and writing a scene here, and just kind of plugging it in. Cause I got most of the book written kind of, and then I'm stuck, but all these scenes kept trying to pop up in my head. And it's okay, we'll just go ahead and write these and see how it goes. So with editing, you said that was one of your least favorite things that you like. What do you have a process for editing? Like beta readers edit more beta readers than send to an editor, or what does that process look like?
So because the first time I've only published the one book, I didn't know what processes there were out there. So I kind of just ended up Googling like publishing companies and then just went from there. So that one ended up just being a review for myself. And then I just submitted it for editing kind of thing. And I got a couple levels with that. That one was really good because she did on like Word. So she did comments and such. So you didn't have to accept the changes automatically. You would see what they were recommending. And that was really helpful because I actually learned a lot about why I needed to edit certain things. And then I kind of did a post review with my friends and family and to see what could have changed. So now I'm trying to take some of that and put it in before the process. So like I've done an edit now for my next book. I've finished it and I'm going to let my boyfriend read it first. Give me not necessarily grammar stuff at this stage, but overall structure, doesn't make sense, is a whole plot point missing, stuff like that.
Nice.
And then I'll kind of wing it.
It's always like, I feel like the editing process always grows with like every book published. So, because I was like you, when I first started, I was like, oh, how do I do this? Like, I didn't know the process either. And since then, I've kind of slowly been adding a little bit at a time, which I'm like, oh my gosh, now my editing process is like months long. Yeah. So, because I've been utilizing beta readers and then editing and more beta readers after I've done edits. And it's like, oh, almost kind of overkill, but I do have a good editor. I like that they do the word program thing, like you were mentioning, where they do the comments. Oh my gosh, so nice.
Even just for say, like they were commenting, like, you've used this word a lot. I'm like, well, thank you for pointing that out because I word counted after, and I was like, yes, you were right.
Yeah,
like 100 times. I'm like, I need to change that word.
Mine's always I put really in there because I guess in my brain, like it just said I say it a lot. I don't know, but it comes out of my writing, like really this, really that. I'm like, why is that? I need to work on
Mine's
this.
Just. I always did it in essays.
That's
too.
My other one. Yes.
Yeah. When my mom used to edit my essays for me for word count wise, she would always just go through and take out all the justs, and I was usually fine.
That's a good idea. I did that after, which book was that? It was one of my rougher, like first books that I came out, and I went back to it and did edits after it'd been out for a little bit. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did I publish this? Like, because it was like a ton of just and really and like extra words that didn't need it. And I was just like, great. So, which I mean, being an author in general, you're always learning something new because it's constantly, the field is constantly growing with newer things and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have this book on audiobook? Have you thought about doing that? If not?
I have not really looked into how it would happen. It's come up a few times, like people have asked if I would do it. Again, it's just another one of those things I just would have to learn the process, I suppose, and see if I don't know if I would have to do the audio part. I don't know how interesting I would be, or if I would hire someone to do it, that kind of thing. Yeah. So definitely something in the future, maybe.
Awesome. I haven't done it yet myself, but I'm trying to like learn more about it with more people I talk to. So hold on, sorry. Okay, so on the characters, let's talk about your characters. Did you have a character that you liked the most? Sorry. Okay, go.
Harrison.
Go, bud. Seriously.
Harrison Charles.
She can't see you because I have the background thing on. Thank you. Okay. We're gonna get there. All right. You gotta love snow days. All right. So characters. Do you have a character that you wrote that is your favorite?
In the Cardinal War, I would have to say, as much as I like Eileen, I think I usually go for that answer first. I do really like Deathy, just because I don't know if he's more mysterious or just writing from even like a different gender was interesting as well. But for both of them, I really liked writing both of them a lot. And then of course their interaction between them was a lot of fun for sure. But I would say I would also like for future stories, I really like my new character a lot, the main character.
Where did you find the inspiration for these guys at?
In terms of names, I have a Celtic name book that I just started using from a previous story, I think. And then I just now name all my characters after them because they have the meanings behind them. So I usually associate either a physical trait meaning or like a personality trait, that kind of thing. And now I've started to make sure the names are more pronounceable because I don't plan to keep putting the name pronunciation in the books like I did with the Cardinal War. So I want it to be something you kind of would think it would be pronounced, but really in fantasy, no one says names right anyway. So
True. I have my favorite book series. I butcher the name every time I try to say her name. So it's
yeah. It's interesting hearing people say names too, how they pronounce it or how they envision the character kind of thing.
yeah, but nobody sees the story playing out in their heads. So it's like you create it and then they turn it into their own thing in here. So
yeah,
I like that. And the unique names like that, that's something I've picked up and started doing too. I really like when they have that extra meaning behind them, not just like, oh, let's pick a random name out of the hat. Not that that's a bad thing, but I think it's really cool when there's more to the name.
Yeah, I like it as well. It just gives it kind of an edge. Even if some of them I never actually say what the meaning is, I know there's a meaning and it helps me build the character up a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. Did you put any Easter eggs in this book by chance?
Yeah, I would say the one for sure is, without giving too much away, there's a weapon used at one point in the story that's not common for the area. And that so far I haven't covered in the second book either, but it will probably come up in a future book. And so far a couple of my friends have caught it. Some of them have not, or at least they've not told me about it. So, but yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how many people pick up on things like that I just kind of threw in that maybe don't have too much meaning for this book, but could have meaning for the future of the empire as a whole.
Sweet. I like that. So the world building for this, because you mentioned all of the colors have meaning and everything. Did you have to do research or anything for that? What went into building this world up?
So in terms of building the world up, because I'm creating my own world, a lot of it's just my imagination kind of going, but I do keep a document because I want to make sure things are consistent between all worlds, because as much as I don't write organized, I'm a very organized person.
Mm-hmm.
So like all the wing colors, it's based on different areas in the empire. So for example, in the south, they tend to have more dusty kind of color wings because there's less water. So I tracked all that. And then the biggest thing is I make a comment on how long it takes to get to places in the Cardinal War. So I had to make sure that made sense in future books. So that's more what I did for research. Although in my current book, I do look up some weather stuff to make sure the temperature kind of made sense and kind of weather phenomena.
That's a good idea.
So I looked up a little bit of things, but a lot of it's just kind of what comes to my head or based on settings from places I've been. And my boyfriend and I did a Dungeons and Dragons campaign a while ago, and I took kind of the settings from that as well.
Yes, D&D is a great place to get inspiration. I've come across a lot of authors that get inspiration from D&D for their stories, and I'm actually really fascinated. I've never got to play the game myself. My husband plays all the time, but it's one of these days, maybe I will have the time to get to sit down and actually do it because it seems like it's really fun and you get to use your imagination and everything.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot of fun. I've actually been asked if I would DM the Dungeon Master, but I don't know. I'd have to figure out if I could roll with it and like change things. As much as I've done improv before, it's kind of a different level of improv.
Yeah.
But I kind of like just being the character and just experiencing the world and being able to throw off the person every now and again.
Yes. And you mentioned improv. Do you feel like that's helped your dialogue with your stories?
I do think so. And I actually did. I did the improv actually to help with my Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and just because it was a random thing to do. And then I took a lot of acting after, and that kind of tied in around the same time when I was doing a lot more writing and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I do find they kind of tied together, and I learned kind of the expression side of it a little bit more. And you can kind of envision things a bit better.
Yes. I think you're the second author I've talked to that's done improv. So, and it hasn't come up yet. So that's really cool. I've actually got to go see an improv show. It's been a long time because with the pandemic and everything and like life in general, and we don't have a lot of it around here. It's still like, it was really cool to go see.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun for sure.
And so going back to the writing and stuff, are you a plotter or a planner?
So it's definitely a bit of both. I need a plan in a general sense to know like kind of what the conflict is and what the overall conclusion will be, especially now that I'm considering doing not like the Cardinal War is kind of more a standalone book where with other stories in the world. Where the next one I wrote, I think might end up having a sequel, like a direct sequel. So that requires broader planning. So I have to learn how to do that a little bit and get really organized with that. But within the story itself, I'm definitely more of a let's write about action today. Or if I'm not feeling that, let's do a more dialogue heavy scene. And that helps me get around writer's block, I find too.
Have you had writer's block a lot?
Not a lot, I'd say, but it definitely comes up. And sometimes just I've been looking at chapter 2 for a long time and it's just not happening anymore. So, but you know what? I know something about the main conflict. So let's just skip to chapter 12 or whatever it is and write about that for a little bit. And sometimes I just go to editing mode for a bit and reread chapters I've done. And that's what I need to kind of spur things along a bit.
That's good. Do you have any other methods to help get through writer's block?
Sometimes just leaving it for a little bit, especially if I've already written a couple thousand words in a day or something, then I'm just like, you know what, I'll take a break for today, come back either tomorrow or if it's in the morning, maybe I'll come back in the evening and give it another try.
Sweet. And do you have a self-care method that maybe helps with that and some of like just mental health in general, staying in the right mindset to be creative?
I definitely read a lot, which I find helps me stay in the creative mindset as well. And then I do listen to music while I write, which I find helps, usually like instrumental music, either video game music or just like recently Studio Ghibli instrumental music, just so I find it quite calming. It's nice piano music. That helps a lot. And then just making sure I'm not pushing myself too much, especially because I'm not having, like, I don't have a publisher in the sense of you have to write 6 books a year or something like that. So I can kind of write as I want. So that pressure's not on me because I think I would get stressed out if it was.
I'm with you on that. I can do it. Like I can work well under pressure, but the stress and the mental load from it, it kills me. Because I actually like, I'm slowing myself down. I'm like telling myself, because I don't have a publisher that I work with this. I'm completely independent author and everything too. And I'm like, okay, we don't have to put out a book every month. It will be okay. Like work with what we have. Just take your time and make it good. So do you find that you struggle with that mental, like push, 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 go, go, go thought too?
Yeah, especially after the first one, especially my friends are like, oh, when's the next one coming out? And it's like, calm down. Like I gotta write the next one. And even writing the next one, I got to think about the one after that and make sure they all tie in and I don't mess anything up.
Yes.
The
creative process, it takes time. Like creativity, you want it to be good. You don't want to push it because then it just explodes in your face.
Yeah.
Outside of writing, do you have any hobbies or anything else that you like work on?
I'd say my 2 main ones would be we love playing board games. We have like 200 plus board games at home. So we play a lot. Of course, with COVID, that's been harder. But normally we try like multiple times a weekend with people. And then otherwise it'd be escape rooms. I've done like 74 of them. So done a few.
Nice.
And then traveling. I love to travel as well.
What is your favorite place that you've traveled?
Italy for sure, which we're hoping to go back to this year with me and my boyfriend. He's never been, so
that'll be fun. Has your experience and time there, has that found its way into your book?
I think in terms of especially the smaller towns, like you kind of get the alleyways or the stone structures or just smaller buildings in general. A lot of those I've taken inspiration from, and I take a lot of pictures when I go, so that helps. I can actually look back at them.
Yes, I can only imagine what that's like. I've never been to Italy myself. The only place I've been to out of the country has been Jamaica. And I mean, it was a good trip, but it was also kind of scary because I was still kind of young and it's great. But I'm still like, there's so many places I want to travel.
Yeah, Europe as a whole is great. I did London, France, Spain last time I went on like a tour group kind of thing. And that was really awesome as well. Again, some of the smaller towns I always take inspiration from.
That is awesome. And I love that that's helped with your writing too. If you could give a piece of advice to a new author or a writer that's just starting out trying to work their way into the publishing process, what advice would you give them?
Especially if you're newer to writing as a whole, I would say just write what you love and don't get so bogged down on, oh, this is written about too much or people don't like this, because everyone likes and dislikes different things. I have books that I know I dislike, but people love it and vice versa. And with that, I think just don't be scared to jump in and try it. That's what held me back for 8 years. And then last year, I was just like, the only thing holding me back is I'm scared what people will think of my book. But that's not really why I was writing it. I was writing it to just share my story. And that kind of got me over that. And I'm glad I did it. I'd not make millions or anything, but it's still, and it was a really fun experience. It still is with all these, with the interviews and just meeting new people and stuff. I've got to read a lot of other new books from authors too, which is really fun. Let's enjoy the journey.
Yes, that's a great advice. So go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and your work.
So the easiest place is my website, jennifertempestbooks.com. It does have, like, on my About Me, it'll have my Instagram, Facebook, and Goodreads on there, which is Tempest Jennifer for my Instagram, Jennifer Tempest Author for my Facebook, and just Jennifer Tempest for Goodreads. There's also blogs on there if you feel like reading some monthly blogs. Still have to put February's up, of course, but some interesting things. There's also a contact page if you want to message me, and then you can buy my book on there. It links to Amazon, Amazon, Canada, United States, UK, everywhere.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for hanging out with me on the show today.
Thanks for having me.